Verses 190 through 194 of Surah Al-Baqarah provide early regulations for fighting in self-defense, emphasizing strict ethical limits. Revealed after Muslims migrated to Medina, these verses permitted fighting against aggressors but forbade initiating hostilities, especially in holy places. So let's begin. I seek refuge in Allah from the rejected Satan. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate. Verse 190 of chapter 2, Al-Baqarah says, "Fight in the way of Allah against those who fight against you but do not transgress, for Allah does not love transgressors." This verse and the ones that follow were revealed after the migration of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be on him, and his companions to Medina, and are thus called Madani verses. The migration was forced upon them due to severe persecution by the tribal leaders of Makkah. They are now asked to fight those who hindered their efforts in the cause of God and acted with hostility towards them merely because they sought to fashion human life according to the revealed guidance of God. Earlier, when they were weak and scattered, the Muslims were asked merely to preach and be patient with the wrongful repression meted out to them by their opponents. However, now that a small city-state had been established in Medina, they were commanded for the first time to unsheathe their swords against those who had resorted to armed hostility against their movement of reform. It was some time after this injunction that the Battle of Badr took place, to be followed by several other battles. The verse also sets up a very fundamental human principle, even in wars, that while fighting is legitimate, they shouldn't transgress. Muslims are told that material interests should not be the motivation for their fighting, that they should not take up arms against those who were not in opposition to the true faith, that they should not resort to unscrupulous methods or to the indiscriminate killing and pillage which characterized the wars of the pre-Islamic era, the age of ignorance. The excesses alluded to in this verse are acts such as taking up arms against women and children, the old and the injured, mutilation of the dead bodies of the enemy, uncalled for devastation through the destruction of fields and livestock, and other similar acts of injustice and brutality. In the Hadith, all these acts have been prohibited. The real intent of the verse is to stress that force should be used only when its use is unavoidable and only to the extent that is absolutely necessary. Next, verse 191 states, "Kill them whenever you confront them and drive them out from where they drove you out. For though killing is sinful, wrongful persecution is even worse than killing. Do not fight against them near the holy mosque unless they fight against you. But if they fight against you, kill them, for that is the reward of such unbelievers." In this verse, the word fitna is used in the sense of persecution. It refers to a situation whereby either a person or a group is subjected to harassment and intimidation for having accepted as true a set of ideas contrary to those currently held, and for striving to effect reforms in the existing order of society by preaching what is good and condemning what is wrong. Such a situation must be changed, if need be, by the force of arms. Bloodshed is bad, but when one group of people imposes its ideology and forcibly prevents others from accepting the truth, then it becomes guilty of an even more serious crime. In such circumstances, it is perfectly legitimate to remove that oppressive group by the force of arms. Next, verse 192. "Then if they desist, know well that Allah is ever forgiving, most compassionate." A brief commentary on this verse. God, in whom the believers have faith, is forgiving and ready to pardon even the worst criminals and sinners after they have renounced their arrogant defiance towards him. It is suggested that this attribute of God should be reflected in the behavior of the believers as well. As the saying goes, mold your morals according to the attributes of God. Hence, whenever the believers have to resort to armed conflict, they should do so not for the sake of quenching their thirst for vengeance, but in the cause of God's religion. Their conflict with any group should last only as long as that group resists the cause of God. As soon as it gives up this resistance, hostility should cease. Next, verse 193, keep on fighting against them until mischief ends, and the way prescribed by Allah prevails. But if they desist, then know that hostility is directed only against the wrongdoers. Next, verse 194, the sacred month for the sacred month. Sanctities should be respected alike by all concerned. Thus, if someone has attacked you, attack him just as he attacked you, and fear Allah and remain conscious that Allah is with those who guard against violating the bounds set by Him. Commenting on this verse, Syed Abul Ala Maududi says in Tafheemul Quran, from the time of Abraham 3 months, Dhu al-Qa'dah, Dhu al-Hijjah, and Muharram were consecrated for Hajj, and the month of Rajab was consecrated for Umrah. For the duration of these 4 months' warfare, killing and pillage were prohibited so that people could perform pilgrimage and return home safely. For this reason, these months were called the sacred months. The purpose of the verse is to stress that if the unbelievers respect the sanctity of the sacred months, the Muslims should do the same. If, however, they violate this sanctity and subject the Muslims to aggression, then the Muslims are also entitled to retribution even during the sacred months. The permission mentioned here was called forth by the introduction of what is termed as nasi, a practice which had been introduced by the Arabs in order to have an advantage over others in their battles and raids. The manner in which the Arabs used nasi was such that whenever they wished either to start a conflict in order to satisfy their vendetta or to loot and plunder, they carried out their raid in one of the sacred months, and then later on tried to compensate for this violation by treating one of the non-sacred months as a sacred month. The Muslims were therefore concerned as to what they should do in case the unbelievers resorted to this artifice and surprised them by an attack in one of the recognized sacred months. The verse refers to this problem.